Okay, so welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us on this second meeting of the Commission. I have to tell you a secret in that I'm not in London at the moment. And luckily, after lots of Wi-Fi problems, I'm now with a working Wi-Fi with some the benefits of having some friends where I am here. So everything should be okay. If everything goes blank on my end, Steph is going to leap into the role of chairing the meeting, but hopefully everything will be okay. Good. Okay. So as I say, thanks very much for joining us. And shall we have the minutes of the last meeting, Steph?
Yeah, I will just get those on screen now.
Okay, so I hope everybody's had a chance to read these. Well, somebody, I think it was Helen, was saying she hadn't actually seen, I think it was the minutes.
Yeah, hi Jeff. I was asked to attend today by my manager, Lydia Drummond. So it might be that it's all been sent to her.
Okay, yes, that's probably the reason. Okay, that's fine, thanks. Okay, so if we just go through, just in case there's any points of accuracy, if I just go through and just announce each paragraph, and then if there's any accuracy, you can let me know. So the first was just a straightforward introduction and purposes of the Commission. Okay with that? We go on to number 2, the terms of reference. Okay, so those were agreed. Number 3, we were looking at the key lines of inquiry. And we're going to talk a bit more about those from the feedback meetings. So there are 4 themes, and we'll come on to the sequence, which we're going to change in terms of the meetings, but we'll talk about that later. So the one for this meeting is going to be the identification and need and early intervention. And so here you have the sorts of comments that were made last time. Then you'll see what's coming, what we said last time that was coming forward as well. These are the voice of the young people, the parents, families. A lot of stuff here. Statutory assessment and support. A lot of discussion about that. And then finally, the theme 4 was this issue of funding and provision. Okay. And then basically we're coming on to the final next Commission meetings. So so this one has been arranged a little bit later because we felt that it was better to have a little bit more time. So we're about a week or so later than we were originally. But if you want to note it now, that Wednesday the 30th is today, of course, and then we've got one on the 21st of July. Okay. So should we go on to item 2? I'm not getting any feedback on it. I'm not sure if anyone's putting hands up or anything. I hope everything is right and we can accept the minutes. Okay, right. So in terms of the agenda, the next item is the feedback from the engagement activity on the early intervention theme. Steph, do you want to put the, oh, there we go.
Sorry, Steph, can I come in? Sorry, before you just start. Sorry.
Yes, Emma. Yes, go on.
Yeah, just quickly, because normally we normally do a quick intro, but because I've seen some new phrases that we're not aware of. Is it possible just to have a quick intro of everyone who's here, please?
Ah, good point. Yes. Okay. That's a very good point. Sorry, my apologies for that. Of course, we do have some more people, don't we? We've had extra people. Okay. Well, I think the way I'll have to do this is to start with the pictures of the photos of everybody that I see and just call their names out. Yamu. So if I won't start with, well, I may as well start with you as you're on there. You'd be coming a bit later. So Yamu, as you're on the screen, would you like just to introduce yourself? And then I'll go back to my kind of list of people. Okay.
Well, afternoon, everyone. My name is Yamu. I am the chair of Newham Parents Forum, and I'm a parent rep from this group. Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll start with the list as I've got it. So the first one is me, of course. So I think everyone has had a statement about who I am as the independent chair and the background I have. So I won't say any more this time. I'm happy to respond to any questions or any follow-ups, but I think everyone so far has actually seen who I am. So I'm delighted to be working with Newham on this commission. Steph?
Hi, I'm Stephanie Conley. I'm the Head of Strategy and Programmes in the Children's Improvement Team and have been supporting Jeff with the commission work.
Okay, Hugh, please.
Hi, I'm Hugh Jones. I'm the Learning and Skills Performance Data Manager in the Change and Insight Directorate.
Thanks, Hugh. Helen, please.
Is that me, Helen Murphy?
It is, yes, sorry.
Hi, everybody. I'm Helen Murphy and I'm a Senior Commissioner in Adult Social Care, specialising in learning disabilities and autism. I wasn't at the last meeting. I was asked to attend by my manager, Lydia Drummond, but I work very closely with operations in social care and CC Malona, who's also on the call as well. Nice to meet you all.
Thanks, Helen. So we've had Yamu. Leslie McCabe, please.
I'm Leslie. I'm a British Sign Language interpreter.
Thank you, Leslie. Now on to the next group. So Anita, please.
Hi, everybody. Anita Stewart, Director of Education, Inclusion and Achievement in the London Borough of Newham.
Thanks. And then the other, I think just the other Helen, I think we've only got two.
Hi, I'm Helen Harris and I am the SEN officer for the Tapscott Learning Trust, and I'm also currently a SENCO in one of our schools as well.
Thanks, Helen. And next is Alex, please, Alex Bowman.
Hi all. Excuse me, Alex Bowman, Senior Commissioner for SEND and Health for Newham.
Thanks. And then Tim, please, Tim Aldridge.
Hi there, my name is Tim Aldridge. I'm the Corporate Director for Children and Young People's Services, so the statutory Director of Children's Services, and I'm responsible for services for children with SEND in the council. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. And next is Jim Robinson, please.
Hi everyone, I'm Jim. I'm the acting head teacher of JFK Special School.
Thanks, Jim. And then Emma, please, Emma Cockerell.
Hi, my name is Emma Cockerell. I'm the Acting Director for Operations and Safeguarding in the London Borough of Newham, and I look after children's social care.
Now, all my pictures have changed sequence. I'm just going to go back to Sissy Milona.
Hi, I'm Sissy Milona. I'm the Head of Service for Mental Health and Learning Disabilities, LBN.
Thank you. Right, I'm now going on to the next list, I hope. Anna, please, from
Hi, I'm the youth participation worker for SEND in the Youth Empowerment Service.
Thanks. Audrey Johnson.
Hello there, I'm Audrey Johnson, Director of Early Help and Children's Health in the London Borough of Newham, and I'm responsible for the specialist health visiting team and for early help support to families. Thank you.
Thanks, Audrey. And then Sandy Davis.
Hello, I'm Sandy Davies. I'm the Principal of Education linked to the AP Free School in Newham.
Thanks. And then John Rook.
Hello, I'm John Rook. I'm Director of Delivery of the Newham Health and Care Partnership, which represents BARTS, ELFT, Council, NEL, CCG and the GP Federation in Newham.
Thanks very much. And then Selina Sheikh, please.
Hi, my name is Selina Sheikh. I'm a parent rep and I also run an organisation that supports Muslim autism and ADHD mothers in the borough and throughout East London.
Okay, thanks very much. We get on to another list of people. Kirsten McLeod, please.
I'm Kirsten McLeod, I'm Head of Newham Crews.
Thanks. Veronica, please.
Veronica Martel, I'll be taking a note of the meeting.
Thanks, Veronica. Councillor Carleen. I've only got half your name here, Carleen, sorry.
It's okay. So I'm Councillor Carleen Lee Parkway. I'm the lead member for Brighter Futures, which looks after the Youth Empowerment and Participation Service, Youth Safety, Early Help and Children's Health.
Thanks. And Councillor Sarah Roos, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. Apologies for being late. I'm Councillor Sarah Ruiz and I am the Cabinet Lead for Children's Social Care and Education.
Thanks, Sarah. And Aidan Mermit, please. You're muted at the moment.
Hello?
Yeah. Can you say it again, please? Yeah, I can hear you now.
Sorry, my name is Aidan Mehmet and I'm the team manager from the Preparing for Adulthood team.
Thank you. And Michael?
Hello, I'm Michael Legister. I'm a comms account lead in the communications team for CYPS.
Thanks, Michael. See who we haven't had. Adiola. Adiola, you there?
Good afternoon, my name is Adiola.
Yeah.
I'm a parent rep.
Thanks, Adiola. Now, I think that's everyone. Okay, right. So should we go on to the next item on the agenda? Okay, so Steph has produced a brief PowerPoint on the various activities that we've been undertaking. As a general point, I just want to make it clear that although we've identified 4 themes and we've tried to focus this past period of meetings on early intervention, naturally everybody who's been engaging has got lots of things to say and they don't always link directly to that theme. So all the things that have been said have been, we've got notes on them. We'll try to focus on this early interventions theme, but also we need to bear in mind that all of these themes interrelate. So we're trying just to organize the way we discuss things and focus on this meeting on early intervention. But as you'll see, as we go through the points that people have raised, they do vary, quite widely and that's fine, because we can't just regulate things in a very strict way. Okay, so the first theme is this, and as you see, those are the meetings that we've had. So we were involved with the partnership conference, made a presentation there, and there's a lot of feedback. The parents' evidence gathering session. Oh, I should also say that there will be opportunities for further meetings of these sorts with the same groups, perhaps some new ones as well, as we go through. So the fact that there is a group on here doesn't mean they won't appear again. So we had a long session with a large group of parents, which was very, very useful, very interesting. Have your say with young people, which Anna was very heavily engaged in organising, and we've got a feedback from that. Steph, are we going to show the feedback, for example, after this, going through the list?
Yeah, we have. So we had a very nice bit of graphic art kind of designed for us based on young people's feedback, and you'll see that within the presentation when we come to that section. Okay, that's fine. So that went on for probably about 4 hours, 4 or 5 hours, I think, for a day, in the theatre, and so that was great. More recently, we've had the SENCO forum with a large number of SENCOs from across the board, from preschool area up to secondary and so on. A meeting earlier with the health and social care practitioners, and we've also been collecting evidence through emails that people have sent in. There's not been a large number of these, and quite a number of them have actually been stimulated by the meetings. So sometimes we've had written follow-up from a meeting which has been held, and for example, a parent has then sent me some more stuff. And I just want to make the point again, although we're clear about this, but it's important, and particularly for parents, to know that these meetings and the information that they send to me is confidential. So nobody is being named or identified. What we're looking at in all these activities is to identify the themes and the evidence that is coming from different parts of the system. And it's important, particularly for parents and for young people, to know that they will not be identified in any of these discussions and reports that might follow. But their contributions, of course, are critical to the exercise. Okay, so that's that. And just to remind you, this is the list of, or not a list, the diagram of the way we've identified themes coming from the very beginnings when I did all these sessions with, I guess it must be now 60 to 70 people now, but it's initially was about 40 to 50 people who gave us some indicative areas of topics to look at. And these are the ones which will be kind of guiding us today. Okay, we can move on. So this is the sort of material that's coming from them. Now, I think everyone's had a chance to see these PowerPoints, Steph. Everyone should have had these, shouldn't they? So I'm not going to go through them in detail. Just a general point. Of course, these are statements where it may be a view that's that's made by one person. Often other people come in and say, yes, I agree with that. So we're not saying that this is entirely representative or majorities or anything like this. These are comments that have come forward, and we've identified where we're getting some, getting repetitions and so on. But sometimes these are just good points that perhaps only one person might have made. So you'll see the issues about parental from the parents' feedback. I just want to pick out a couple of things. I think the key issue is the degree to which parents feel that they need much more support. And that goes from the very beginning when needs are identified, discussing with other professionals, with typically in many cases within the nursery and the preschool system, right through to when needs are identified later or at transitions as well. Parents are saying often they do not feel that they're getting the support to understand the child's needs sometimes, or how they change over time and how the needs might be being met, let's say at primary, but the challenges of secondary require some understanding of what's coming up with the secondary system. Also, there were issues like number 4 about how do parents self-refer when they need support, and who do they go to? How easy is it to get some support? And also, when with the high needs funding system, this is not always understood or has features which are considered problematic by some parents as to whether money which is in the system is spent, or rather not spent, as they see it, on their child. So you'll see there's a lot of issues there. So just picking up a few. Okay. And this is what I was referring to just now, is this wonderful art that was produced while we were at the young people's feedback. And I just invite you to really have a good look at this over the period, as you have done before, but also following on after today. Again, I'm not going to go through it all, but just making a few points. Sorry.
Sorry,
Yeah.
It's just going back to the parental feedback. Is it possible, if I may ask Steph, to share the minutes that came out of that event on the 8th? Because I think a lot of professionals needs to reflect on what was said at that meeting. If like parents who's got children from 30 years ago and parents who's got children right now are going through the same issues, and I think everyone needs to know about what was said at that meeting.
Yeah.
Hi, Yami. Yeah, very happy to do so. If you don't mind just checking with the parents that attended, because as Jeff mentioned earlier, we've kind of kept very strict rules in terms of confidentiality. So we had an independent minute taker for those sessions. So if parents are happy for us to share them, then we will gladly.
I think it's okay because we proofread it and there's no name of any parent. It's just said parent. So I think it's okay for you to share it.
All right, great. We'll do so.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shamu, and thanks for the advice. I think we will just sort of pay due diligence that there isn't. It's not just having names, of course. It may be someone is fairly easily recognizable. And so, in order to kind of stick to our promise that we will do our best not to identify or make somebody identifiable, we need to do that. So we'll just check that. But anyway, thanks for your advice on that. It's very helpful. There's lots of these, as I said, I'm just picking up some, and you're quite right. Those points about how long some of these issues have gone on were very well made, and they are in those notes. So you'll see some points again. These are getting lots of other points that were made, but here's some that have been made by young people's feedback. And again, I have to make the point that this is a relatively small number of young people, of course. So these are individual comments, and they identify key issues from this particular group of young people. But you'll see some positives as well. So there's concerns about the support that's been mixed, maybe too much, as seen by these young people, or too little, not really what they asked for or what they think they need. And that raises issues about children's voice as to whether we listen to the young people, as well as making our own professional judgments and go into some sort of co-production of activities. Also, they were making the point that learning and pastoral care and support can really help. So it's nice to get some positives. A lot of the things which come forward in these sessions inevitably are going to be areas to work on and develop and do better, but there were some good positive ones as well. The issue about young people and struggling to get access of equipment, I think, is a very important one, and including not only in schools but in colleges as well. And I'll just make one last point. As I say, I don't want to go through every one of these. This issue about same and different. So the young people recognise that they were with different forms of special needs and special forms of disabilities. They were different, but there was also a sense of being treated the same as everyone else. And in terms of interpreting that, I think that means that I am, they're basically saying I am a young person and there's things that I want as a young person in Newham. And they've got some examples like access to sporting activities and so on that other young people would experience and expect. And then that feeling of rejection when you're not meeting the threshold for services. Okay, should we go on to the next one? Head teachers and SENCOs, we had 2 different meetings here, and there's a huge amount. I've got a lot of notes coming back from that, which I've just received from the SENCOs in particular. It's more recently got the notes from that, and I've got a very detailed setting out of information there. The points I just want to pick up as a summary was that, first of all, that as I said, the focus inevitably was on the difficulties. So the issues were challenging most of the way through, but there were positives as well. But the general can be summed up with issues like a lack of provision and problematic systems. And by that, I mean things like the system that overall is looking at the development of education, health and care plans or not, or for example, send support within schools. The systems, the forms that are filled in, the time it takes, the delays, the lack of professional, some specialist staff, the 2-year check being very positive, but what happens if somebody is missed out or they move in? So the whole question of transition into Newham, what happens to youngsters who come into Newham from, whether it's from abroad or from some other place in the UK. One comment was, does the
Have we lost Jeff?
I think we might have done.
Oh, Steph, are you okay to continue?
Yeah, I'm okay to continue until Jeffrey joins us. So I think the summary of kind of the reflections with head teachers and SENCOs was very much about the systems approach and how that was working. I think there was also some reflection here around us having some incredibly inclusive schools that felt very comfortable and able to meet children's needs, and potentially others not being in the same place. And then we also had quite long discussions about the suitability of certain provision and making sure that children's needs were really matched to their placements, and that being something that was highlighted a few times.
Can I ask a question on this, please?
Of course.
So where it says about not all schools willing to take children, did this come from head teachers and SENCOs actually saying they didn't want to take on children, or was it in their experience they've heard from parents that, because that was my experience, I had a list of 10 schools and 6 of them never bothered returning. I gave everyone 3 calls. And then I was even told by a school and on a show around, we can't accept your child. We don't really do autism in this school. So I'm just interested, is it parents feeding this back, or is it head teachers and SENCOs very openly saying, we don't have the provision, we don't have the funding, we cannot take these children? Is that what's happening?
Steph, I'm back now. I got
Great.
thrown out
Would you
just
like to
now.
respond to that one?
Okay. Sorry about that. I hope this isn't going to be a forewarning of what's going to happen for the rest of this session. No, good point. No, this was included SENCOs and head teachers who'd also commented, not necessarily that they themselves, this applied to them themselves, but they felt that it applied within the system in other schools, for example. So parents felt it, as you said, but also professionals within the system also were making the same points. Mm. So the general kind of what feeling I've been getting is a sense of a very, pretty strong desire for inclusive education and supporting young people in different ways. We're perhaps not doing it as well as it should be done, but to have inclusive systems. But there was also a feeling that some people are not so positive about that, and perhaps would keep young people out for various reasons. So yes, good point. Thank you. And health and social care. So, and I think the positive, particularly the thing that I found very positive with this meeting was a recognition from the health colleagues in particular that the health system has not been as central in a kind of partnership with the authority and the schools, etc., in the past, but there's a strong desire and commitment to improve that, and gave evidence, examples of how that's already started to happen. So although there's a lot of difficulties here, that issue of change, positive change, was one that was coming out very strongly, I think, from this meeting. So the difficulties in having said that were things like staff turnover and as I just said, about high needs focus rather than on early intervention and lower level needs. I mentioned about the previous siloing and so on, and issues that are recognized as confusing, for example, the relationship with special speech and language therapy services, but also within this field, in this area, is the whole question, and this is general across, although it came out in the health and social care, we haven't really talked about it before, but the whole issue of COVID and all that's been missing, the way that children who would have been assessed in a particular way, based upon long experience, over the last year or so, it's been very problematic. And also the issue about workforce training, and again, is not unique to the health and social care meeting. Was somebody wanting to say something then? Oh. No? Okay. I think that's to the end of that, isn't it? Okay. There was a whole lot there, and as the point pointed out, we've got notes as well about these things, which we can share, and we'll follow that up afterwards, Steph, shall we, to see what we can do with that. I'm very aware that I'm talking a lot here, so I'm now going to stop and invite Hugh to present data with a PowerPoint presentation, which we'll put up. So over to you, Hugh.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah, I just lost a bit of what Jeff was saying there, so I didn't quite catch the end of it. Hopefully, you can see a screen that I'm sharing.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, so it should be just a PowerPoint slide, Newham SEND Commission identification of need and early intervention. So this is not going to be a very, very detailed analysis of data. This is just a high level picture of trends, numbers, some key issues that arise from data related to pupils with special educational needs in the borough. It's quite important that we understand the ways in which Newham is similar and different from other local authorities and national averages. There are certain things which emerge from Newham's history of inclusive education, which makes us look a little bit different from other local authorities in terms of data. So it's just to clarify that and to see how recent changes to processes within the local authority, recognition about the need for having more EHC plans and so on, actually looks in terms of the data that's being available to Ofsted and in the public domain. So what I'm going to cover in today's session, we're going to look at trends and numbers of pupils with special educational needs in schools. We're going to compare ourselves with England and our statistical neighbours, set of local authorities that are similar to Newham. We're going to look at how Newham seems in terms of the principal types of need that are classified for pupils with special educational need, and how we compare with other local authorities. Separate to the issue of pupils in schools is the question of EHC plans that are maintained by Newham, and that might include pupils who are placed in other local authorities and so who wouldn't turn up on the school data for Newham schools. I'm going to look at the rate at which new EHC plans being issued as well over time. And I'll try and summarize at the end in one simple slide everything that we've kind of looked at and boil it down into a few key bullet points that you can take home and of course replay later at home for your edification at any time. So first thing, I've called it a time series, just a trend showing the percentage of pupils with special educational needs in Newham schools. How does it look? Well, it looks like this. Now, let me talk you through what's on that chart, because there are a number of very interesting things there. So firstly, well, you can see 3 lines on the chart, plus a big vertical dotted line, which I'll come back to in a moment. But the blue line at the top of the 3 indicates the total number, or total percentage, I should say, of pupils with special educational needs in Newham schools. Now you can see that broadly speaking, that's been coming on a downward trend ever since about 2010, until around 2018-19, when it started to kind of go back up again. At the bottom of the chart, there's a green line that shows the percentage of pupils with EHC plans. Now you see that has also been stable, pretty much, almost no variation until around 2018-19, when it's increased quite sharply.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is in red, and that's the number of pupils, percentage of pupils who are classified as having SEN support. And that's been dropping in recent years. So we can see it's still come down over the last few years. But what's happened is that the percentage of pupils entitled to EHC plans has risen faster than the decline in pupils with special educational needs support, so that the total percentage of pupils with SEN is actually going up. That blue line rises at the end of the chart, and that rise is driven by an increase in a number of pupils with EHC plans. So what's that big red dotted line in the middle of the graph? Well, you can see that between 2014 and 15, there was actually quite a big decline in the, not in EHC plans, but in pupils special educational needs support, SEN support. Now that corresponds to a change in government legislation. All that happened in that year was that the SEN Code of Practice, as it's called, was altered. It updated one that dated back to 2001. Schools were able to, as a result of the new Code of Practice, offer a more granular, differentiated level of support for pupils. And another thing happened, which was that up until 2014, there were 3 categories of special educational need. It was an EHC, or a statement as it was then, and also School Action and School Action Plus. So School Action and School Action Plus were combined into SEN support. And all that happened was schools had a chance to rethink their coding of all the pupils before they submitted their data back in 2015. And as a result, a lot of pupils who had previously been classified as having some special level of special educational needs were not included at that point. And so the percentages fell quite sharply. It's not a Newham thing, all right? They fell across England. And in fact, you can see almost the same pattern, exactly the same pattern for England as a whole, and quite a few individual local authorities as well. So that's what's happened. You can see the big change in the last few years with a number of EHC plans coming through the system. Let me just move on to the next few slides, if I can do that. I hope you can see this. This is just an excerpt from a much larger dashboard of SEN data that we create at a strategic level. All the data in this dashboard actually is in the public domain. But so it's all potentially out there, although you'd have to do a lot of work pulling it all into one place, which is what we've done with it. So I want to just draw your attention to a few things on this dashboard. At the top here, we've got the percentage of pupils of the EHC plans and the percentage of pupils of the SEN support, state funded. And here you can see what I was referring to earlier, the percentage of pupils of the EHC plans in Newham has gone from 0.7 back in a few years ago to 2% in 2021. And we can see that's an upward trend, a bit like the chart we've just been seeing. It's still pretty low compared to our statistical neighbour authorities, which are around 4%. We are double Newham's. We are 11th out of 10 statistical neighbours plus Newham. We've got the lowest rate of EHC plans of all of them. And nationally, we can see it's around 3.7%. Again, Newham is quite a lot lower. In fact, out of the 154 as they are now, that's a slight change, 154 local authorities in England, Newham is 148th in terms of the percentage of pupils of the EHC plans. That's even taking into account that rise that we saw at the end of the previous chart. The next line indicates the percentage of pupils who've got a lower level of special educational needs, SEN support. And what you can see in Newham is that's been falling, again, as we saw in the previous chart, 11.2% a few years ago down to 10.4%. Newham is 8th amongst our statistical neighbours and 126th nationally. And in fact, Newham bucks the trend on that measure. You can see that that level has been falling in Newham, but look at the trend nationally. It's been going up over the last few years. So it's interesting to speculate why it is that although EHC plans, the number of percentage of EHC plans is rising faster than the decline in the percentage of pupils on SEN support, why there is a fall in SEN support at all within Newham is a good question. Why are we coming down when nationally the rate is that percentage is going up? The next part of this page shows that data separately for primary and secondary schools. I'm not going to go through every bit of this, but because I want to talk about the last part of this chart on the page, this table, which shows us all of the classification, all the different types of needs as they are classified by the Department for Education. This is all in school data. Now, I don't want to go through every number, there's a lot of numbers here. The column I want you to just pay attention to is right the way over here. It's Newham's rank position nationally. How do we compare nationally with each of these different categories? And I want to start right at the top, actually, because there's something a bit hidden in the first one, it's autistic spectrum. Technically, we've got the 10th highest rate in the whole of England. We were 11th last year, January 20. We've gone up to 10th this year. But that hides a difference between primary and secondary schools. In Newham primary schools, we have the highest rate in the whole of England. It's the highest rate of autistic spectrum pupils. So of all the pupils who've got special educational needs, we have the highest proportion on the autistic spectrum. Nearly overall, as you can see on the chart, it's about 19%. Nationally, it's a lot lower, only 12.5%. So it's a big difference there. And there are other measures where other categories of primary need where we are quite high as well. So we can see that for profound and multiple learning difficulty, Newham is the 4th highest in England, a high proportion there. We're quite high for speech, language and communication needs, they're the 9th. So there's a number of areas where we're different, we have higher proportions, but there are some where we're quite low compared to other local authorities. So we don't tend to use the category of moderate learning difficulty in Newham. You can see the difference there. In Newham, the latest figure is about 7.98%, nationally 18%. We're 144th on that measure nationally. We're also very low for social, emotional and mental health. 132nd nationally. It's rising, or it's variable, but we're still quite low on that measure. So Newham is similar in some ways to other local authorities, but different in many others when we look at primary SEN need. Just to put that into context for you in terms of actual numbers of EHC plans, this is as of January. This is a school census return, so as of January each year. So you can see that for autistic spectrum, for instance, we've gone from 145 pupils with EHC plan or special educational needs statement back in 2016 to 547 in 2021. A huge rise there. We can see profound and multiple learning difficulty from 60 to 117. Speech, language and communication's gone from 28 to 128. Social, emotional, mental health, although it's still low compared to others, we saw in the previous slide, has actually risen recently to 126. And overall, the number of EHC plans or statements that we've had from 2016 to 2021 has gone from 419 to 1,158. Quite a big jump. How about the number of plans maintained by Newham? So this can include pupils who are placed in special educational provision outside of the borough. So the numbers differ from the previous slides. Those are school-based data. This is now the number of EHC plans maintained by the local authority. And you can see a similar pattern though, can't you? So up until around 2018, 2017, the numbers didn't really vary a great deal, but what we've seen is a consistent rise over time since then to 1,606 in January this year. The reasons for the yellow and the green is that these ones in yellow were the old statements. And what you can see is new EHC plans coming in to take over the statements. So statements converted into EHC plans and new EHC plans being issued as well. So a change within Newham to increase the number of pupils with EHC plans. This is moving pupils away from high-level needs funding and giving them an EHC plan. We can see that actually happening quite clearly in the data. And we can actually see the number of new EHC plans issued by Newham over time. How has that actually happened in practice? Hardly any change from 2009 to around 2017. That whole period of time, the number of new EHC plans issued in the calendar year hardly changed. In 2018, it jumped considerably. In 2019, even more, 524 plans. In 2020, the calendar year, it dipped a bit to 451, partly to do with the impact of COVID and partly to do with a few other kind of changes as well. But a huge alteration in the way in which new EHC plans are being issued by Newham. And finally, just to bring all this together, so we've got a quick overview of what the kind of data tells us at quite a high level. Number of EHC plans in schools is rising, both in Newham and in England, whereas the number of pupils with SEN support, which is falling in Newham, but not nationally, we buck the trend. We have comparatively high rates of profound and multiple learning difficulties, speech, language and communication needs, and autistic spectrum disorder pupils. Comparatively low rates of moderate learning difficulties, specific learning difficulties, and social, emotional, and mental health. But the number of EHC plans maintained by Newham has been rising, but with a slight drop in new EHC plans issued in 2020. And that's it. That's the kind of key data that I wanted to present to you to set Newham's performance in context in the widest kind of sense.
Thanks very much, Hugh. Most grateful for Hugh's very thoughtful and clear analysis of some very important aspects of the data. I've met with Hugh twice now, and I've made the point to Hugh that one of the things that I think we as a commission will find very useful is to see data. You'll see the complexity of it. There's lots and lots more data that Hugh, I know, has already analysed. So we need to be very careful as to how we share this and can talk about it meaningfully. But the data that Hugh has shown you today, just that on its own,
I think raises some very fundamental issues about what's going on. Also, when when you refer to the national data, those data do raise fundamental issues about the SEND system as a whole across the whole country, and the way that the funding issues across the country are affecting it as well. But our focus primarily is on Newham, of course. Can I see if anyone has any points they want to raise with, or questions for Hugh, if that's all right, Hugh? You want to take some questions?
Yeah, of course, of course.
I've got one. Sandy, you got a hand? Okay.
Thank you, Jeff. Yes.
Helen after Sandy. So if we have Sandy first.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Hugh, that's really interesting. And what my question is about the impact of that on those figures of young people who are over school age with their EHCP. What is the impact on the total for those who are post 16, perhaps in FE or older, but still have an EHCP?
Yeah, Newham does have very high numbers of pupils post 16 with EHC plans. That we think is partly connected to the change that occurred a few years ago, which meant that the money at post 16 was, if you to get money, you had to have an EHC plan in place. That led to quite a sharp rise in the number of post 16 EHCPs that were present in Newham. Nationally, there's also been an increase, but it's been faster in Newham than elsewhere. It's true. The main driver for new EHC plans, especially those around ASD, are actually in the first few years of primary school. So what we're seeing is a big rise in the number of EHC plans, and to some extent pupils in SEN support as well, with on the autistic spectrum in the first few years of primary school. So there's a slight change during the past few years. You're quite right, the post 16 has made an impact, and it has caused the numbers to rise. But now what we're seeing is something very different coming through in the first 3 or 4 years of schooling.
Thank you. Helen, you had your hand up as well.
Hi. Yeah, two things really. Firstly, just to make clear the connection between the decrease in children SENS and the increase of education healthcare plan, that for many of those children, it's the same children who are just converting across that were previously high needs funded, but not education healthcare plan. And then the other point was, I think that because we traditionally have had, historically, we've had a lot of high need, then I think our children who have got special needs, maybe that fall on the lower end of need, we may be under-identifying. So it was really interesting that you mentioned specific learning difficulty and social and emotional and moderate learning difficulties. So yeah, I can see that there would be various reasons why we might under-identify for SEMH and for specific learning difficulty from just my general experience. MLD, I'm not so sure why that might be. That was a little bit of a surprise, but really, really useful analysis of the data, I felt. So thank you very much, Hugh.
Just briefly to comment on that, you're absolutely right. We're seeing a lot of pupils move from high needs funding now to EHC plans, and that's definitely driving that upward trend there. But it's happening faster than the rate at which pupils are coming out of the SEN support category, which is curious. Yeah. So overall SEN's going up, but SEN support is actually coming down. But you're absolutely right. We're moving from high needs funding to EHC plans. That's driving those new ones being issued.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I don't have any more hands up at the moment. I think. Oh, Tim.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, just thanks, Hugh. That was really, really helpful and raises lots of questions. One of which is, as I think Helen raised, are we identifying some of those groups of or cohorts of young people early enough, and to what extent are perhaps is there discretion around the way in which we describe need? and is that different to the way other local authorities describe need? And yeah, I just think it's going to be really important to get behind that reduction in SEN support, whether it is sort of explained by the increase in EHCPs, or whether there are other factors that might be contributing to that reduction in SEN support. Because again, it's going to be really important that we are providing support as early as possible to those groups with lower levels of need as well.
Just to comment on that, I think that there is variation between schools in the way in which they record special education. We know this happens. I would be very surprised though if as a local authority as a whole, Newham was especially different from other local authorities in terms of the way. Maybe there is, it's a bit hard to gauge from the data. What have we got to remember, I think, with the way in which schools in particular record pupils at special educational needs support level, is that it's not technically necessarily a diagnostic evaluation. It's more around need specification. It's specifically around needs, which makes it slightly kind of trickier to say, how can we use the data to find out an actual level of need? That almost touches on clinical issues and what's a diagnostic evaluation. What this is telling us in theory is what the levels of need are perceived by the schools are for the pupils that they hold. Whether that is systematically different within Newham from other local authorities is a really good question. Maybe there is something in the history in which Newham has been slightly different. The inclusive agenda has made us a little bit of an outlier in that measure, which is why our figures don't compare for that zone. It's hard to say from the data. It would be people's expert in knowledge on the ground to make a comment on that. But it's a really important point. Yes, I agree entirely.
Thanks, Hugh. Carleen, please.
Thank you. My question has been partly covered by Tim. You stole my thunder. So great minds think alike. But do want to just quickly say one thing. Firstly, Hugh, really pleased to see this information. Really pleased to see it in this format and easily understandable. Actually, we've come such a long way in the years that I just want to give credit where credit is due. So thank you for that. There are things that do jump out at me. So obviously the increase in EHCPs since 2018 is for me shows where we're going in regards to a response to a motion that I brought to full council back in 2018 to invest in the EHCP process and the SENDIAS service. So actually it's good to see that what it is that we bring through full council as political leadership is actually having an impact on the ground. So just wanted to flag that. I guess the question, something that, and maybe it's not a question, it's a comment for you, Hugh, which is when I look at the sheet that talks numbers of EHC plans in Newham primary, secondary and special schools by primary need type. So obviously we see an increase from, let's even say just from 2018, 158 EHCPs in autism spectrum to 2021, 547. And what I do notice when I look at these is the increase in what I deem as invisible disability, a disability that's not necessarily seen on the outward, but actually the increase actually in the EHCPs that not protect those children, but give those children a clear pathway. So obviously I see that in relation to the, for instance, social, emotional, mental health, speech and language and communication, the increase in EHCPs, which tells me that we're doing something better than we was previously, and actually giving those children the correct support at the correct time to give them the most opportunity to meet their potential. So I just wanted, I guess, maybe to just flag that as a comment that actually what I can see from a political point of view is actually where we've said that we're investing, we can see actual tangible outcomes. And obviously further down the road, there may be other outcomes that we could maybe see in regards to progression, statistics, maybe results for those young people if they can achieve those. But even if they're not academic results, they are very much life skill results, and we can actually say, actually, the investment that we've made here in Newham has paid dividends in regards to those children, and even through the parents when they tell us, actually, this is what's happened for those young people specifically. So I just wanted to flag that.
Thanks, Carleen. Yamu.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, and thank you here as well. It was really helpful. I think the bit, I don't know, maybe it's shown, but I've missed it. You know, those plans that you say we've got at the moment, are they quality assured? And I think the other bit I've missed on the data is, where is the data for post-16?
Before the age of 16, you mean?
Post-16, yeah, 16 plus. Yeah.
Yeah, do you mean, could we separate those out? Is that, yeah?
Yes, please.
Yes, that's quite possible. We can split it by age, and we do analysis of each age group as well. So we can separate out the post-16 to the pre as well. The comparisons that we're making, though, especially in that second table, which showed a comparison with statistical neighbours in England, is like for like. It's not that one shows one thing for Newham, but it's all consistent in terms of comparisons. But we can give you a breakdown. We can provide breakdowns for this group by age, and we can see how the trends look as well. That's all quite available.
Okay, Helen, were you wanting to ask another question? No. Okay. Adiola, please.
Yeah, thanks. Just like everyone has said, it's good to have the grid that you just showed, but just like Yamu had said, it would be good to have more in-depth in it, to just be able to like look into it more in-depth in terms of, yes, we have the numbers there of an increase in numbers of EHC plans, but where's the quality assurance on them? How many of them, for example, are ending up to be mediation or tribunal or stuff like that? We need to know, because that's a recurring thing that happens. And also, when you brought up the side of the SEMH and things like that, historically, for most of the parents that we talk to who come to us in the forum, there's a lot of plans that you have a gap there that says not known, no health needs known. So it'd be good to also actually see how many are there that are actually identifying the SEMH and all those things that, you know, children, that is going on in children's life, because I think it was Helen or someone who spoke earlier, and that's the truth. Some of these things we're seeing here might be the same children moving from like early help, you know, to primary and stuff like that. So just be good to just like have some more flesh. I don't know, maybe just because I'm a data cruncher, maybe just to be able to see more and just have more flesh to know where is this, you know, because yes, early help is here, but how is it permeating around, and what are we seeing as a trend, to have a clearer picture of what is going on? Because I can see that the little you show, which is good, it shows evidence that yes, we have an increase in the number of plans, which is good. Something is happening. However, how good is this, and how is it helping these children? And also what Carleen said was, I mean, aspirationally, where are we going? Just evidence of stuff going on for our children here in Newham, you know, where they're going, what's happening to them with all this support and money that's been put in. Where are we going with that? But so far, it's okay to an extent. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Adiola. I think we need to stop there. I think Adiola was the last one whose hand was up. Can I thank Hugh again? I think from the comments, gratitude for this. And as has been said, Adiola, the most recent, there's obviously lots more data that we can look at. We can dig down in some cases, some which would not be in the national data. You know, some of the quality assurance stuff would need a bit more working on, but certainly over this period into the future, and when we come to talk about the plans and so on, one of the sessions which will be on the whole of the system, some of these data, of course, will be very important, and looking again at a bit more depth and a bit more forensically about what's happening. So can I thank you very much for that presentation, and the next session is to agree key principles for early intervention across the local area. So this is a group discussion. Steph, are you going to organise us?
I am. So I guess we've heard now, haven't we, kind of the feedback from lots of different stakeholders. And it was just really to have a kind of moment of reflection, but before we go into the kind of group discussion on some of the things that have really stood out for us. So obviously we've covered that in Hugh's update, but thinking more broadly about what we've heard today, what are the kind of key things that have really stuck with us that might help us now when we start to think about the future and what we really want early intervention to look like in Newham. So it's an open question, really. Anna, did you want to come in?
Yeah, just going to say, we've seen lots of stuff kind of around education and stuff. What about like the softer side of stuff? So like life skills and also leisure. So there's kind of a lot of issues with funding and what parents and young people are getting to what's kind of identified. And I know in the EHCP plans, they also identify kind of leisure needs of young people, but it kind of gets identified and I think it gets lost a bit.
Thanks, Anna. Councillor Ruiz?
Yeah, just really picking up on an earlier slide about how accessible the local offer is and whether we need to do some specific work around that, because I think there's probably a lot going on that probably doesn't get onto the local offer. I've just come from a play conference, and actually there's a wealth of stuff happening in Newham that none of us are aware of, and I just think it might be worth us working maybe across to the play offer and seeing where we could have some of those activities actually on the local offer so that we can make them truly inclusive.
Thank you. Councillor Carley?
I guess just in terms of what you were saying in regards to the identification of need and early intervention, I think maybe we could think about, actually, when you think about early intervention, you often think young, you think children, you think primary age, you think babies. But actually for some young people, that's actually in the later teens, early adulthood. They may have undiagnosed needs. And actually, I think we need to think about it in a broader approach, that actually what happens sometimes very well in primary age children or even younger, we need to kind of almost use those positives to do so also in that older age group and make sure that we have the correct people around the table to be able to do that. And when I say that, I think there is not a cliff edge, I don't want to use the word as cliff edge, but I do think that there is a disconnect when it comes to diagnosis of children that are at the older age range, that being anything from 12 upwards. I think there could be a really good piece of work done around that in regards to early identification of needs.
Thank you. Any other reflections? Yami, did you want to come in?
Yes, I think it's broad. When we say early identification, basically going back to the professional that does the diagnosis as well. Are they well trained to be aware of all the conditions out there? And if that is picked up, what is the process? What is the pathway for parents to go through? I think that is not clear. And I think that there's another thing as well. Your child is identified and you are in a setting, you don't know what is on offer or you don't know what is available. Because we talked about the ordinarily available document, but it's not even, parents are not even aware of that document. So it's just knowing what is on offer and how to access it.
Great, thank you. Councillor Carleen, did you want to come in again?
If you don't mind, sorry, just off the back of something that Yamu said, and it's the conversations we've had for years in regards to being in the Newham Parent Forum, which is all of that, what has just been mentioned. However, what about the intervention or work that precedes early identification of need for that family that may not want to accept the diagnosis of their child? Actually, that's a really clear barrier for some families if you can't accept diagnosis, and we've all gone through it, where actually that takes a little bit of time and that support that's needed. I remember in the days when we as families went and did the courses that were run by the National Autistic Societies, they literally were far in between because there is so much level of need and not enough provision. So actually, maybe there could be a piece of work around strengthening that parental support in relation to accepting of diagnosis.
I think that's a really useful point that came up quite a few times in discussions. And Jeff, you might want to come in there, because I know that was raised at the parent group, wasn't it?
It was, and thanks, Carleen, for raising it again. It is very important, and it's really for some parents, it's not easy to accept some issues with their youngster. You know, whether some limitations or some, you know, the way they're developing, they're not quite sure about. You know, it differs in families because there's no, if you've got a single parent who perhaps has not got anyone close to help guide expectations, etc., etc. It's a very complex issue. But what was coming through in a number of ways, as Steph's just said, is an awareness that parents need some help here. You know, and it's across the board. So, for example, a diagnosis that someone has a very severe hearing impairment, you know, that's got a lot of implications, and a parent may not understand what's, you know, not have picked it up early on. Those should be picked up now pretty early on through the health services, but occasionally kids slip through, you know. So the whole issue of parent support is really, really fundamental.
Helen, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, I wanted to pick up that theme as well, and this idea of supporting parents. I think we as professionals have an idea of what that is, but actually what might work better for them could be a model that's quite different from that. So if we look at other parts of society where you have individuals who are struggling with denial and coming to terms with something and accepting something in all different walks of life, you'll often see that the group therapy and the support group and those sorts of models are what are applied. And that is something that I think we could facilitate. And I know that looking at our parents within my school as a SENCO, it's often been those relationships made with parents who've got children who are older and sharing their experience that have helped other younger parents, if you like, move to the next step out of denial, because denial is not a choice, is it? It's a psychological defense mechanism. So I think there could be some work done around parents helping parents. Yeah, so there was that. And then also on a different point, but I think it's already kind of been mentioned, is around professionals' input in early years and how as settings and schools we can access that in a way that's efficient and a system that is simple and usable, doesn't have any intrinsic barriers in it. Because at the moment we have a bit of a loop. Someone was saying about intervention. We have a bit of an intervention loop. So we had to put intervention in place to make a referral to speech and language, which often is our starting place with young children, often, and not always, but you know, it's the most common. We have to put that intervention in place to make the referral now, but to make the referral is going to get us to the funds that help us to put the intervention in place. So we're stuck in a little bit of a loop with regard to that. Plus it adds time, because we've got to prove that we've done X, Y, Z thing before they'll even take the referral into something like speech and language therapy. So, you know, I don't think we need to be adding time and layers to our processes at this stage, or at any stage for that matter. Yeah, thank you.
Selina, did you want to come in?
Yes, please. Thank you. So just wanted to just quickly touch upon a point that Helen made. So in my group, I support currently 256 families. That's the limit you can have on WhatsApp to how many participants are in a group. I have a waiting list of 6 families wanting to join. I can't move it onto a different platform because not everybody else is on a different platform. So as somebody on the ground who's trying to support families, and I'm just a parent, you know, I'm not a specialist, I'm not trained, I'm just, you know, I have a team of people that work trying to support these families. You know, I'm stretched, and I can't tell you it's like having a full-time job. We have an 11 p.m. curfew, and we can see the ladies are just desperate in the morning to just resume and have those conversations. And, you know, if I was to tell you half of these conversations, it is about pathways and processes, like Yemi's just mentioned in the chat. It is about, how do I access this and how do I access that? I'm going to be honest with you, when it comes to cultural barriers, because I saw the comment about cultural barriers, it's not so much in my experience of not accepting a diagnosis, but not understanding, and that information, you know, now your child is given a diagnosis of autism and it's just autism. To some people, they don't understand what that means, and they need that kind of, you know, breakdown, which we don't do anymore. We don't have Asperger's, we don't have the different categories. So these parents then come back to me and they say, well, does this mean my child is never going to talk? Does this mean my child is never going to walk? And I can't answer those questions. Nobody can. But it does fall on us to support these families that have these questions. And it's not that they don't accept always, it's they don't understand, and they need that breakdown and they need that support to kind of talk them through it. The other thing is, before NPC was wound up, there was discussions that we had about working with GPs. So usually children who aren't in nursery or they're not in school, those families would go to a GP. And this was my experience as well. I took my child and I was told, your child's too young, come back later, come back when she's 3, you know, and I think a lot of children get caught up in this. And I wanted to know if this was ever addressed, because obviously then COVID came and we never finished these discussions in NPC. You know, has there been anything that's done with GPs? Has that, you know, are we planning on doing something with GPs? Because it's an important piece of work that when families don't have a SENCO, their child isn't in school, or they are home educated, which a lot of families are now, what happens there? You know, when they're going to a GP and the GP just says, you know, we'll come back and look at this when they're older, because they don't know what the referral points are. Maybe they do, but they just choose not to. I don't know. Sorry, NPC, it was Newham Parent Co-Production, which doesn't exist anymore.
Thanks, Selena. I'm going to bring Kirsty in, who's got her hand up, because I think Kirsty will be able to offer some insight as well on that.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to go back to the point that Carleen made a little while ago about the early intervention, because as most of you know, we've been trying to share the kind of the good practice in early years, which has been deemed as a strength in our current evaluation and assessment. And I think just to give some context as to why that's probably been able to move is because it's not just about the process. So yes, we have a notification process, and yes, there is a multi-agency panel, and I'll come back to the point of the SENCOs and the paperwork in a moment. But what that's also been able to bring is workforce development. And I think for us, you know, we have an opportunity in our services to commission, and we are commissioning quite a lot of workforce development and training. And in early years, we're able to have a CPD offer. And I think for the early primary, so key stage 1, the CPD offer and workforce development. And I know, Jeff, there's a whole ways of working group, but I do think looking at that workforce development across the full age range is really, really important. And that is a strength in early years, but it is linked to commissioning. So when we talk about the point made around speech and language and all of those processes, it's really important to link the commissioning functions into that, and what's the responsibility and the strategy around how we commission services. So I just wanted to flag that as there is positive working, but it's not just linked to a process. It's linked to, we have, you know, parents, we train EPATS parents, we train parents of children of SEND, and we have, you know, every children's centre trained in that. So, and we work with health visitors to train. So, you know, there's a good training offer. So I just wanted to keep focusing on that bit. And then the other bit about the SENCO, I suppose it's just that balance between paperwork. So we probably talk about this every single day. And I've probably been challenged on this every single day. But within the process that's been set up for early years, yes, there's more paperwork to do. Yes, there's more accountability around funding, But what we were able to do last year is have 36 funded children who were able to go into school with an EHCP plan before reception. That's the first time we've ever been able to track that. So I think it's really important to balance the work that has to be done, and we're talking about transition every day at the moment, the importance of that young child transitioning into school and what is the key information that needs to go with that child and that family to support the positive transition. So I do think I really hear you about the paperwork. I think it's been harder because your transition support hasn't been able to be face to face. So I think we need to think about that as well. But we do need to balance kind of the reports and what we record and how we have accountability over funding to ensure that that child is in the system, that child is monitored, and when things go wrong, we know about it and we can report on it. And then that balance between you guys on the ground having to complete the paperwork and how we can come to an understanding that there's balance and importance for both, I suppose, is what I'm trying to share today. Steph, I don't know if you wanted me to give any other context on other questions.
Oh, thanks, Kirsty. I think that's really really helpful. Councillor Rees, you've got your hand up too. Would you like to come in there? No, old one.
Oh, that's a legacy hand, Stephanie.
Legacy hand. No problem. So I think I'm just going to pick up on some comments that are in the chat at the moment.
Adiola's got her hand up. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, can't see you there.
Yeah. Sorry.
Adiola, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I mean, having heard what we all said, and it's all a recurring thing, what is important is how do we communicate? Because all these things we're talking about, I mean, Kirsty is saying what she's saying, we all know that there's work happening. Just like Councillor Sarah was talking about local offers, many things happening in Newham. Newham has got so much going on for it. But the question is, how do we communicate what all the good work to everybody? And it's always a thing about you saying, we don't seem to have joined up service. Because just like what we're just hearing here and all about with the parents, for example, when somebody gets a diagnosis and stuff, like for some parents, like bereavement, what is your next point? Who is there to support you? You know, so we don't have those things clear in the first instance for even any parent to know, okay, fine, when I get this, what's happening to my child? Who do I speak to? Where's that support network? Where's the training? I hear in the past it used to happen. I guess, I mean, Yamu, correct me if I'm wrong, when people got diagnosis, that is someone that would take them to where they would go to. So it's just what, like we say, the communication is key. How are we communicating to everybody? So if we don't have joined up services amongst even what Kirsten said in early help, the good work that is there, some people are not even aware this thing is available here. Some of us have to come to this level to hear it's happening, as an example. But those on the ground, parents who are there, I mean, to be honest, when MPF does some of his stuff, I think, Geoff can bet, we had parents who were crying because it's hard. It's like trauma. It's almost like trauma-informed care. For how long we'll keep on talking? So there has to be like this baseline whereby, you know, from the early onset, from even when someone starts having thinking there's something going on with their child or stuff like that, where do you go? Where's that safety place you go to where you can speak to someone and have someone you can, I think we were talking earlier about having other parents support you. MPF is doing its part, but it needs to be joined up. And it's like I said, it's about how do we communicate, and those who are even going through the trauma. So many parents have not been able to work anymore. They've left their careers, they're struggling. So it's having a triple impact. So even if you start the early help from this point here and now, it continues. It's a whole family that is impacted. And that is going to cost money as we go along. So even when we talk about even the SCMH, it's not just the child at this point we're talking about, even the parents are going to their own mental health crisis. So for me, it's about, you know what, we just have to just look on to when we get this heli up, we're talking about where do we go from there? When you get that thing, who do you go to? And it's not about you passing everybody around. There has to be this, I don't know why, I always talk about NHS, about the real system, how it works. Why don't we have something like that? Whereby there's something that's captured from the onset, that is just obvious. Not that you wait till the child gets to, just like what Colleen was saying, not the way it gets to 8-12. Because for every child that you see, from when they're young, autism doesn't just spring up when they're 12, for example. There's some things that are underlined that you already begin to spot before it gets to itself. So really and truly, we just need to just look at how we're communicating. Because even with the local offer, some of our parents really truly are not digitally, they don't have digital access to stuff. But while we're not working closely with the schools and also with the SEND department, because every child in Newham is known to the SEND department, whether they're on the SEND support or EHCP or no EHCP plan. So, I mean, so we should just have it clear cut in a way. That's it really for me.
Thanks, Adiola. Some really important points there around communication, which I think are key. And Tim, and then Audrey.
Thanks, Steph. Yeah, no, I agree with Adeola's point about communication and how we're clear about what the offer is out there, and that's clear both to parents but also to professionals, and where that support is available. I think there's a real important piece on professional development, and I think colleagues have already talked about the importance of how we skill up those professionals who will be the first people there to identify and provide support to children and their families. I think there's a key piece around alignment, how we align a more consistent response across the professional network. I think John Rook has left actually now. I know he had to leave at 2. But I think Selina mentioned a point about GPs. It'd be really interesting to think about how we involve primary care in that alignment. And I think there's also that need to build upon the sort of data that Hugh presented today, so we understand better what the sort of need is out there in the community, but also understand the experiences of families. And we get that feedback so we can improve their experiences moving forwards.
Thank you. Audrey, did you want to come in?
Yeah, some of what I was going to say has already been said, but I think kind of going back to something Carleen said really early on in terms of need to be identified early as possible. So it's early as possible, but it doesn't mean early in terms of age. It's as soon as the issues start to emerge. So that is through the life course of children. And so in order for that to happen, there needs to be a competent professional workforce around children. And so that's every different professional group that has access to those children that will understand when how needs may be manifested so that they can identify them. And the reason why I say it in that way, because I think about the number of our children that don't have their needs identified and diagnosed until they get into the criminal justice system. So it's about how do we skill up all professionals, including school staff, to be competent enough to be able to identify when behaviour indicates a level of need around SEN. And I think Tim just said it as well, about how do we need to make sure that information is readily available, that it's kept up to date, and that we quality assure the information. So if it's through the local offer, we need to make sure it's a really, really robust system, that there are processes in place so the information is kept up to date, and it brings all of the information and processes that we're talking about here that is readily available to parents, and that there's a mechanism to support parents to access that information. And in terms of families, I think it was Adiola said it, in terms of for some families, it isn't that families don't accept the diagnosis. It is real in terms of it feels like a bereavement, because the loss of the child you thought you had is what you have to deal with. So there's the practical consideration around work, finances, all of that. And then there's the real emotional consideration around how do you as a parent and how do we support parents to deal with that diagnosis? And added to that, what is the support for the rest of the family? Because very often it impacts on the rest of the family. So I think about the specialist health visiting. We don't say, well, your child's got special educational needs, we're only going to look after that child. All of the family's children will be with the same nurse. So it's important, how do we ensure that our resources meet the needs of the whole family? And then just finally, there are sometimes some cultural issues that impact on how parents may respond to children. So I think that we need to understand the impact for parents that goes for the physical, the psychological, the emotional, but also the cultural. And I think that does sometimes play a part. So I think it has to go through all of this. And I think we do need to understand a little bit more about what this data is telling us about how we respond in Newham. So I just kind of had those thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carleen, you wanted to come in?
Thank you. I guess there's a couple of things that jump out to me in regards to identification of needs and early intervention. And I guess going back to your data, Hugh, I think it's the second or third sheet where it talks, it's the part that I was referencing earlier in regards to time series showing the percentage of pupils with special educational needs in Newham schools. And one of the things that jump out at me is, so we can clearly see that the statement or EHCP percentage is going up slowly, but it's still less than 5%. We know that because you said it was 2% in your figures. But then the amount of young people that have a need is around about the 11% mark. So the question that comes to my mind is, what's happening with that 9%? What's going on there in relation to, do they have support or not? And what does that look like? And so therefore, actually, is there a bit of work in that moment? And some of the things that have been said, I think, I guess my point of view I want to raise is parents, when we've clearly identified that there needs to be a mechanism that supports families better. And that will be different for every single family. Every family has a different set of needs and a different set of circumstances. And so we already know that, okay? That the parents here in this meeting have clearly stated that. But there's also got to be this, we've got to change this culture of we have to fight for the rights of our children. Because when you fight, you exhaust yourself. And then when your hearing becomes very difficult to understand sometimes. And I'm not saying that's for all, but I am saying that there's this continuous feeling of fighting. It's emotionally draining. And I go back to the point that Adiola made, which is actually, you're not then only dealing with the needs of that child, you're dealing with the needs of the parents, the families, the impact that has on relationships with themselves as family members and community members, but also with service users and professionals. And I think we've got to be smarter in how it is that we identified need. And I'm not saying we should give a booklet. I remember when my child was diagnosed, and I was told all this information, and all this information was given to me, and then I was left to my own devices. And I just felt like I was almost being strangled by the feelings of what I felt at that moment in time, but was very fearful about how I would navigate the system. And I think the problem here is we need to be thinking about what would that look like for us individually. And I can guarantee around this table, or virtual table, we would actually get the answers, because we'd all have a part to play in a joint up approach that would be the best way forward for our families. And more importantly, those children it would affect. Because let's not forget, guys, our children will grow up to be adults, and they will be the members of our communities that will be the next. You know, we want the very best outcomes for them, no matter what their needs are. So I guess part of me, that feeling about early identification, in order to make sure that we have a robust joint up way of working in order to communicate with parents at the get-go is really important. And that piece that Selena spoke about, which is how do we work, what work streams can we actually do from this point of view going forward, in regards to how do we better train our GPs or our health sector or the hospitals or the, you know, whoever it is, the service provider that's providing the, I don't know, therapy of some sort. How can we better make that process an easiest pathway to navigate, if that makes any sense?
Thank you. Councillor Ruiz, do you want to? No.
Take that hand.
She still hasn't figured out how to take the hand.
No, I haven't.
All right.
Right, Darlene.
I think that was a really useful point for us to come in on, actually, Councillor Carleen, which is around us in the room. We probably have some pretty good ideas and solutions amongst us here. And the point of this discussion, this exercise, was about us setting the principles that we wanted to take forward. So I think, Audrey, you mentioned, didn't you, about actually this being whole family support. This, you know, special educational needs don't affect one young person in isolation. And maybe that's a really good good way to start us off. So Jeff, I know that you've been scribbling down and making some notes, and maybe you can guide us through now for the next kind of 10 minutes, us setting some principles about what we want to achieve when we're talking about early intervention and identification, and very much echoing that point around this being over the course of young people's lives.
Okay, thanks, Steph. Bit of a tall chart, tall task. That was absolutely fascinating. As you know, I've had the privilege of speaking with probably everybody here, at least probably 2 or 3 times. And there's so much energy and understanding and commitment here. I'll just come up with a few issues, sort of just try and summarize some of the things I've said. So forgive me, I mean, I'm just kind of scribbling, as Steph says. This isn't kind of formulated, but we can do that and sort of, you know, when we move forward. The way I see this commission is that we're building up step by step. We're getting people's experiences, we're getting some data, we're talking to each other, we're building up commitments to go forward together on the sort of society that we want for our young people, particularly those with special educational needs and disabilities. And so it builds one on the other. It's not like having an answer now and saying, okay, we've done that, we've sorted that. It will come again and again and again. But I think some of the things that have come out, so forgive me if I've not mentioned everything, so parents and the young person are central. These are the people who are fundamentally affected. And the point about families, not just the child or one of the parents, it's the family dynamics are all affected. We know this from, you know, from much experience and research. So whatever we're trying to develop, we have to kind of keep in mind the notion of the family and the young person. And remember, some of the points that the young people themselves were making was they know that they've got problems. You know, these are older, these are adolescents that we were talking to, but you know, they want still to be seen as individuals within their own rights as well, and to have some things that they share with other people, other youngsters, you know, the sort of things that other youngsters would be doing. They want the same. So that idea of the family and parents within the family and the young person within the family, I think is very fundamental. At the other end of the kind of continuum, I'm not sure it is a continuum, is the whole question about the system. And the point that I think Carleen was making about we don't want to feel as though we're fighting. And clearly, you know, one of the things that came out very strongly with the parents that I've met are these stories which are, you know, really upsetting, some of which have gone on for years and years and years, because a lot of the parents have got children, in inverted commas, who are now kind of older, even adults, I think. I think one person was talking about someone who was much older than an adolescent. So these are life histories that are coming, that are developed. So that's also important. So the system as a whole is very complicated, we know that. But there are good systems and bad systems, and good aspects of the system and bad aspects of the system. And we know from across the country that, as I said, probably every local authority is struggling with special educational needs and disability, but clearly some are doing it much better. And that's the key. How do we learn from those in terms of the systems as well? So we're talking about individuals and families, but at the other extreme, we're talking about the system within, not just within the local authority, but between the local authority and the health authority and so on. So all the different components. So these are complex. These are not sort of sorted in a day. And some of the work I know is going on. Give you an example of something which hasn't really come up, but it was coming up in the meetings in the schools. Was the issue of provision. You know, does the provision match the needs of the young people? Okay, Newham's got a lot of provision with the resource provision, for example, in schools. How is that working? Is it working well across the board? And I understand that there is some work going on about this. And I think that's an opportunity to make the point that this isn't sort of like in a kind of time capsule where we're kind of talking, and then eventually at the end of something will happen. I mean, in a way, there will be something like a strategic plan, but there is work going on at the same time. And we've heard from colleagues here today about work that they're involved with, which has been going on anyway. So, you know, it isn't just kind of an interim before something all happens. Those are just some immediate thoughts. I'm just looking at the time because we're talking about forward planning shortly, Steph. But just to give you some idea of kind of the way I see this commission going. So, you know, over the next period, and the summer's coming up, it's an opportunity, I think, for some various things to happen, to develop and build upon the things that are happening here. So some of the data, we've had suggestions of how we might dig a bit deeper, as I said, and perhaps we can get some more information on that. But also to see what all these interventions that are happening, because clearly there's a lot of positivity about the speech and language therapy service in terms of actually helping children, but is too much of their time doing something else? Is it to do with assessments for plans ultimately, which are important, but so also is actually working with the youngsters to actually improve their speech and language and communication skills? So as I say, they're just off the top. I'll put some of these sorts of stuff together to be a little bit more, hopefully more coherent than just kind of coming up with a list of things at the moment.
Thanks, Jeff. I think then just in terms of time, because we've got 15 minutes left, we'll move on to the forward planning item. So at our last commission meeting, we discussed, didn't we, how we wanted to engage more consistently and in a much more far-reaching way with our children, young people and families. And we know that the voice of our children is very much a theme that's come up in the commission meeting. So as part of our forward plan, we had intended to do a commission meeting every 4 to 6 weeks, I believe. And so a group of us have been looking at you know, developing a plan of engagement, which I can happily share on screen with colleagues now. But we also thought about actually how do we use this opportunity of the summer. We know that we have lots of activities going on. We know that we have lots of engagement events planned, and how do we use this summer to really take stock and engage with as many people and families as possible. So what I'm going to put on screen now is a bit of a proposed plan of how the commission agenda could work, and I'll just take you through it. So as you know, we've had quite a few different sessions which Jeff fed back on that related to early identification of needs and intervention, and our next focus was all around voice of children and young people. So what we would like to do with members' consent is continue using the same format, which we think worked really well, of engaging with head teachers, but also our SENCO forum to get quite a far-ranging understanding of what's going on in education. We have, as discussed previously, we're going to be doing a specific dedicated session for children with complex communication needs, which is going to be supported by our education specialist support services. And we then like to launch quite a far-reaching survey that we would work with our schools to promote during the last 2 weeks of the summer term, but also then beyond to the full summer, which would be devised by our Rights and Awareness and Co-Production Group leads, our Youth Participation Service, and our SENDIAS group, and Professor Lindsay as well. And what we'd like to look at here are a lot of the issues that have come up, but also some best practice that we have from the Council for Disabled Children around some of the themes that we should cover when engaging with our children and young people, and these related to safety, leisure, independence, inclusion. And I think, Anna, you mentioned before, like getting that real understanding what preparation for adulthood looks like as well. So the intention is that we have this survey open throughout the summer. so that people can engage with it when they're able to. We continue with our format of health and care staff engagement as well. And we will also do the similar process with our parents. So some feedback that we have had from parents as part of our work on the commission is the importance of anonymity. And I think some of the mechanisms that we've developed as part of the commission involve direct engagement with Professor Lindsay. They also involve kind of using our SEND Commission inbox, but parents have raised that actually neither of those are particularly anonymous, and that they would like a different method to engage further. So very much mirroring what we want to do with children and young people with our parent and carer group, and again, having a similar group of leads coming together to help devise that for us. And then again, Professor Lindsay kind of engaging with different groups and different voluntary sector organisations that will be running programmes over the summer. So we get a real opportunity to engage with lots of different children and young people. And so the proposition here is that rather than meeting at the end of July, that we would instead meet the first week of September when everyone's back, where we will have all of the survey results of everything that's taken place over the summer, and we can have really kind of constructive conversations about how we take forward that real kind of meaningful co-production work with our children and families. But also I think really importantly, so that we have a baseline of the work of the Commission, and that we can track how the changes that we make over time are really impacting people's direct experience of our services. So I'm very happy to share this forward plan with colleagues if we agree that this is a sensible approach. And you'll see then that we go on to the next theme, which is all about statutory assessment and support, and that commission session will happen at the very end of September. So I'm going to stop sharing there just so I can take some thoughts on that. Councillor Carleen?
Just a quick question in relation to the survey that you spoke about. How would that be presented? Obviously, I note that survey is specifically to children and young people. So what would that, like, if you just give me a round view of what would that actual survey look like?
So it would look like lots of different sections. So as I was kind of describing, about safety, about independence, about their life at school, about their friends. So it's meant to be quite a holistic kind of survey of what how they are experiencing their current life, really.
Okay.
And we would work with the research team to kind of devise kind of specific mechanisms that we could then analyse. So it might be that it's scoring happiness, but using kind of some of the work that's already been done locally around the outcomes framework to inform this.
Okay, so the reason why I asked that, Stephanie, is just thinking about your cohort of young people that you're going to be engaging. That survey has got to be presented in a way that a child that's non-verbal and a child that doesn't use language can communicate. So whether that be smiley faces, whether that be a computerized program that allows a person to use a, you know, whatever the format. So here in Newham, it specifically is no, it's not. It's sign along. You might need to use sign along and the symbols through sign along to be able to communicate with those young people. So as much as I heard survey, I thought piece of paper that looks like that, that's not going to interest anybody. And especially not a young person.
I promise we won't allow that to happen. And to be honest, that's why we're using the expertise of the specialist education service to help us design this, and to really think about how we do some of that for children that are non-verbal and might need to engage differently. But also thinking about the age groups. So in order for our schools to be able to share this meaningfully, thinking about designing something slightly different potentially for secondary age and primary age, and working again with colleagues in early years about how we might do that engagement. I think by giving ourselves the summer as well, it means that we can go out into children's centres and we can do some of this hopefully in person, which I think will make a big difference.
Oh, that's brilliant. The reason why I ask also is because as a parent, and we all as parents will speak very passionately for our children, and we will advocate for them the very best way we know how. But sometimes in that, we do stifle our children's opinions, because what I want for my child can be completely different to what my child wants for themselves. So I just wonder, and this is we will do what we're doing as parents, but I just want there to be almost like a little caveat on that survey is it is for the young person to fill out, and it doesn't matter what they say or how they say it, but it's really important to capture their voices. And then actually, you know, as much as parents might assist in that process, or a youth worker or a participation worker, or whoever it may be, a school teacher, whoever it is, actually that needs to be clear that it actually is for the young person, because we want to hear their voices. That's it, sorry.
No, thank you, completely agree. We'll look at taking that forward. Great, I think, is that generally consensus that we're happy to move forward with that approach and have our next...
Again, Adiola's got her hand up. I don't know why I'm...
Sorry, Adiola, I can't see.
No, I think actually Carlene has just, I think what I was going to say was it's just been said, really. It's really, we just need to ensure that reasonable adjustments are made thoroughly. And just like what she just said, even if it's not, it has to be in the best interest of the child, no matter what their disability is. So at this point, we will really want to see, I think it's Raj's department, I don't know whose department that is, what they're actually going to be able to offer, which also is going to fall in line with what we've been talking about for our children, those who are nonverbal and things like that. What are the communicating tools that are available for them in schools? Because most of them, their voices are not being heard or captured. So this would actually be a good template to see how we can actually further help our children. So just like she just said, it might not be a wise decision, but it's still in the best interest and the voice of the child. And that should really matter. So yeah, that's, thanks.
Hi, Alex, did you want
to sorry, before I finish, are you going to ensure that, because of the HAF program that's going to be happening right now, can we ensure that this kind of a thing comes to them? Because I know this, the one there, the funding that's going around for things. So we should really ensure that and even children who are in care and things like that, that we capture everybody and foster carers and everybody's involved in this process, please.
Yep, we will do. Thank you, Adiola. Alex, did you want to come in there?
Just a very quick one on the method and format. Obviously, we have got very experienced providers in the area that routinely seek feedback from their clients, ultimately, in a range of creative ways. So, yeah, I think it would be worthwhile tapping into those existing networks as well as some of our schools.
Brilliant, thank you, Alex. I'll contact you about getting those contacts made. Okay, I'm going to hand back over to Jeff.
Okay, okay, thanks, Steph. So we're just coming to the last few minutes. So can you just check if there is any other business that anyone wants to raise? I'm just flicking across.
Sorry, can I quickly ask? Sorry, I know maybe we've talked about it before. I know this SEND Commission is going to feed into the strategy 2022 to 2027. It's just being mindful where it's like halfway 2021. So when are we sure that this commission is coming to an end? And going back to the work that we've been doing, how sure are we that what we've been sharing is going to reflect on the strategy?
Right, so I'll have a go at answering that. So the time plan is to complete this work of the Commission in the autumn. Okay, I think originally the authority was hoping to do it a bit earlier, but by the time we actually started, to fit in meetings before the summer holidays and so on, realism was, to something like October, November time. So that's when the Commission is. So it is time limited. It's not going on for the next 10 years, so don't worry. And I think in terms of how much effect it's going to have, you're a member of a large group of people who have all got some very strong opinions and very good ideas. And there's a lot, as I hear it, a lot of commonality about the views that are being expressed. So, without wanting to prejudge where we're going to be in the next few months, as Steph's pointed out, we've got a plan of how we're going on to get there. So I think I'm optimistic. I'm not going to say it's easy. You know, there's lots of barriers. Everyone in this room can talk about barriers to, you know, either about their own child or about the way the system's working. But there's a lot of, I think, a lot of commitment to try to make things better. Okay, any other business? If not, it is.
Jeff.
Sorry, Tim. Yes, so
yeah, no, just briefly, just on that point, and thank you, Jeff, for your response. Just to say, I know Steph and the team will be working to try and pick out some of the key themes that are coming out from the SEND Commission as it goes on. So we won't just wait until the end. We'll start to pick up the themes as we go along. The aim is, as Jeff says, to absolutely draw on what you've, you know, the things that we've discussed today and the work across the Commission to inform that strategy. Now, I've no doubt there'll be things that we don't quite get right, and so therefore I think it's important we've got that ongoing conversation with this group and other groups like it, so we can continue to refine and improve whatever strategy, whatever approach we take. Because, you know, you never get to that end product, do you? It's a series of iterations of improving positions, but we're absolutely committed. I think what we were talking about earlier is to make that sort of that proper paradigm shift to really working with parents and not doing to parents. That's our real aim.
Thanks, Tim. Okay, I think unless there's anything else, can I thank everyone again for all your contributions today, but also all of you have already made other contributions with meetings and so on, and the other work that's going on outside this meeting. So I look forward to seeing people again. Talking about young people, there's young people just appearing on the screen now. So, and I look forward to seeing you at the next meeting of the Commission. When before that, of course, there'll be various papers coming out to provide background information. So, enjoy the rest of your days, and see you soon.
Thank you, Jeff. Really good.
Bye-bye, Jeff.
Bye.